Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Tourism and Hospitality Service Management, SOTHSM. Diploma in Tourism Studies, DTS. Block-1 Understand Tourism Market. Unit 3 Tourism NMWXTS, International and Domestic. 3.0 Objectives. After reading this unit you will be able to know about the major tourism markets of the world. Learn about India's share in world tourism. Know the major foreign tourist generating markets for India. Appreciate the need for tapping new markets or increasing the market share, and understand the regional and domestic tourism markets. 3.1 Introduction. In Unit 2 an attempt was made to familiarize you with certain aspects of market segmentation. In this unit we attempt to provide you information about foreign, regional and domestic tourists markets. Here Units 1, 2 and 26 of TS6 you have already read about profiling of tourists and the efforts being made by the Department of Tourism, Government of India for overseas marketing. Most of the information and data used in this unit is based on the tourist statistics published annually by the different segments of the tourism industry. Make use of this data for devising their own marketing plans and strategies along with segmenting the markets in relation to their own products or for designing products based on market segmentation. The unit starts with identifying the international tourist generating markets for inbound tourism to India. It goes on to discuss the regional markets as well as the features of the domestic market in India. 3.2 Foreign tourism markets. A knowledge of tourist generating markets is essential for the marketing of tourism products or services. This helps you not only in segmenting the market but also in targeting your customers. Take for example two countries. Country A has a sound economy, people love to travel and so on. Country B has a poor economy, people have no surplus to spend on travel. Naturally the marketeer of tourism products will target country A. Before taking up certain issues let us understand some basic concepts. According to the Department of Tourism, Government of India, an international visitor is any person visiting the country on a foreign passport and the main purpose of the visit is other than the exercise of an activity remunerated from within the country or establishment of residence in the country. In this definition two segments of visitors are covered. I. Foreign tourists who stay at least for 24 hours in India and the purpose of whose journey can be classified under any one of the following. A. Leisure, recreation, health, study, holiday, religion and sport. B. Business, family, mission or meeting. The following three categories are not regarded as tourists. A. Persons arriving with or without a contract to take up an occupation or engage in activities remunerated from within the country. B. Persons coming to establish residence in the country. C. Persons who come as excursionists. Similarly, nationals of Nepal entering India through land routes along the Indo-Nepal border. Foreigners entering India from Bhutan by land and children below 3 years are not included by the in the data series on foreign tourists. E. An excursionist is a visitor who stays less than 24 hours in the country. Those visitors who arrive in the country by cruise ships and do not spend a night at an accommodation establishment in the country are mentioned as cruise passengers. These definitions are useful while identifying the markets or tourism generating regions and also for data collection. The statistics regarding world tourism movements like arrivals, departures, tourism receipts and expenditure, etc., are collected from the various bulletins and publications of the World Tourism Organization, WTO. The Market Research Division of the also collects data and compiles it in the form of tourism statistics annually. For example, 1I. The arrival statistics are compiled from disembarkation cards filled in by the foreign tourists at the time of their entry into India at either the airports, seaports or land checkposts. E. The average duration of stay is estimated on the basis of a sample drawn from the embarkation cards filled by the tourists at the time of their departure from India at the exit points. E. The data about nationality, age, sex, etc. is also obtained through similar means. This kind of data is helpful in profiling the tourists but has its limitations for the purposes of marketing. For example, in 1994 India received 85,352 tourists from Germany. We also know how many out of these were women or men or to which age group they belonged. But in order to know their motivation, type of services expected by them, etc., one has to conduct special SW Generally such tasks are performed by the overseas regional offices of the along with carrying out the promotional campaigns, advertising and image building exercises. For India, Let us first look at the world tourism markets. 3.2.1 World tourism markets. A variety of factors determine the flow of tourists. Sound economy, surplus incomes, travel, and holiday attitudes, search for leisure time. Incentives for travel by employers, number of holidays and %ons, political conditions and travel advisories by government are some factors to be taken note of in this regard. An analysis of the data available shows that the major tourist generating markets in the world have been the developed countries. Today all destinations are in intense competition with each other to get a larger share in the market. Table 1 gives you the 15 top tourism spenders in the world for the year 1 meter. The most reliable and valid single indicator of total travel from any one origin country is tourist expenditure, while global tourist receipts are the best single indicator of total travel to any one destination. The Economic Intelligence Unit, London, International Tourism, forecasts to 2005. Table 1. Top spenders, 1992. Look at the screen. A good marketeer would ask where the tourists were heading from these 15 top tourist generating markets. The answer is provided in Table 2, which gives you the figures for 15 top countries in terms of tourist arrivals in the year 1992. Table 2. International tourist arrivals, 1992. Look at the screen in terms of regional distribution of international tourist arrivals. Europe continues to attract the maximum numbers, getting 59.3% share out of the total world arrivals in 1993. However, there has been a decline in its share over the years, as in 1980 it was 66% and 62.6% in 1990. The share of East Asia and the Pacific region in 1993 was 13.7%, which are an increasing trend. As in 1980 it was 7.3% and 11.4% in 1990. Africa and America have shown static figures, as the Middle East has shown a declining trend, from 2.1% in 1980 to 1.4% in 1993. You may ask where India stands in this scenario. Well, the figures are: world tourist arrivals, 1994, equals 528,461,000. Tourist arrivals in India, 1994, equals 1,886,433. Percentage share of India, 0.36. However, in terms of foreign exchange receipts, the percentage share of India is almost double than that of arrivals. World tourism receipts, 1994, equals 321,466 million United States dollars. Estimated foreign exchange receipts in India, 1994, 2,265.21 million United States dollars. Percentage share of India, 0.70. This indicates that in spite of a lower share in arrivals, the tourists spend more in India, and the average length of stay is about 28.7 days. This is an encouraging trend because many of India's competitors like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, etc. receive a much bigger share in arrivals when compared to India, but with a lesser length of stay. Assessing the tourist flows, the role of travel time becomes significant. In all the tourism markets, long-haul destinations face a major hurdle because of the time and costs involved. For example, 21 countries receive more than 50,000 Japanese tourists per year. Out of these, the tourists showed preference for 6 because they are very close: South Korea, Hong Kong, China, Taiwan, Marianas and Philippines; 4 because they were fairly close: Australia, Singapore, Thailand and New Zealand; and 4 because they were close: US, Indonesia, Canada and Malaysia. The rest: UK, France, Italy, Germany, Switzerland, Spain and India remain preferential for other reasons like culture, history or business. In fact, 50% of the Japanese tourists travel to neighboring destinations. Similarly, 75% Canadians go to US, 75% French go to West European countries, and so on. See also Unit 1, TS-2. There are certain new markets also opening up. For example, South Africa, Israel and the new states of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, etc. have emerged as potential markets for India, and many tour operators have already entered the field. 3.2.2 Markets for India. In terms of attractions, India, as a destination, is a strong tourism product. Culture, history, architecture, beaches, mountains, religion and ethnicity etc. have traditionally been the pull factor for international tourists. Yet, infrastructure-wise there are certain weaknesses which makes it less attractive. For example, accessibility, lack of international airports, big size of the country, lack of hotel rooms, etc. We shall be discussing some of these in the subsequent blocks. In spite of these weaknesses, India crossed the 2 million mark of tourist arrivals in 1995, total 2,123,683. The DOT is keeping a target of 5 million in the next 5 years, which, keeping in view the shortcomings, seems unrealistic. Yet the efforts will go on. The markets for India are determined by assessing the tourist arrivals from different countries. Table 3 gives the figures of 10 top countries, other than Bangladesh, which constituted 63% of the total arrivals. Arrivals from all the major tourist-generating countries showed a positive growth during 1994. This trend continued in 1995, see Table 4. Look at the screen. Table 3. Tourist arrivals in India, 1994. Table 4. Tourist arrivals in India, 1995. Let us examine the top 10 markets for India. 1. UK. United Kingdom remained on the top of all the tourist-generating countries for India with 300,696 tourist arrivals during 1994, as compared to 102,483 arrivals during 1980. The average compound rate of growth was 8% per annum from 1980 to 1994. As in earlier years, about 59% of the British tourists were males and the rest 41% were females. The most predominant age group was 25 to 34 with 23% of the tourist, followed by age groups of 35 to 44 and 45 to 54 with 22.9% and 17% tourists, respectively. The average duration of stay of UK nationals in India during 1994 was 29.5 days. The maximum arrivals were during the winter months of January to March, 34%, and January-December, 31.1%. Arrival figures of UK residents during 1994 indicate that approximately 99.4% of the arrivals were from England, followed by Scotland, 0.5% on Wales, 0.1%. While 91.7% of the UK nationals visited India for holiday and sightseeing. About 7.3% came for business and another 0.3% arrived for visiting friends and relatives. 2. USA. United States of America is presently the second largest market for India, though it occupied the top position till 1973. The tourists from this country have increased steadily over the years, except during 1974, 1975, 1979, 1980 and 1984. Having registered positive growth during 1985, 1986, 1987 and 1989, arrivals from United States of America showed negative growth of about 6.7% and 6.4% during 1990 and 1991 respectively. However, the arrivals during 1992 and 1993 recorded a growth of 29.8% and 3.9% respectively over the corresponding years. The growth registered during 1994 was 11.6% over the year 1993. The arrivals grew from 78,608 in 1980 to 176,482 in 1994 at a compound growth rate of about 5.9% per annum. The growth during 1995 was 15.2% over 1994. While 59.3% of the American tourists were males, the dominant age group among them was 35-44, 24.2%, followed by the age groups 45-54, 20.3%, and 25-34, 18.7%. On an average, an American tourist stayed for 28.7 days in India during 1994. The maximum number of tourist arrivals were during the winter months of October to December, which accounted for 32.1% of total arrivals from this country. Available data on the province of stay of USA resident indicate that approximately 29.1% of the arrivals are from the province of California. The other provinces contributing substantially to the arrivals in India were New York, 22.3%, Washington, 15.6%, Illinois, 11.2%, Texas, 3.4%, Pennsylvania, 3.0%, Florida, 2.2%, and Nevada, 1.5%. While 94.2% of USA nationals visited India for holiday and sightseeing, about 3.8% came for business and another 2% came for visiting friends and relatives. 3. Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka occupied third position by relegating Germany to the fourth position and constituted about 5.7% of the foreign tourist arrivals in India during 1994 among the top 10 tourist generating countries. Arrivals of Sri Lanka nationals, which were 68,402 in 1980, went up to 89,009 in 1994 at a compound rate of about 1.9% per annum. The arrivals of this nationality have considerably declined in the recent years due to ethnic problems in that country. During 1984 and 1985, the traffic declined by 7.7% and 8.5% respectively. Though it registered an increase of 9.5% during 1986, again it declined by 1.7% in 1987, 5% in 1988, and 4.2% in 1989. The traffic increased during the year 1990, 1991, 1992 and 1993, registering a growth rate of 1.1%, 2.5%, 2.6% and 6.9% over the corresponding years. The arrivals from this country during 1994 registered an increase of 15.7% over 1993, and during 1995 the increase was 28.3% over 1994. The peak period of Sri Lanka tourists was the first quarter from January to March, constituting 26.4%, followed by the second quarter April to June with 24.8% during 1994. About 99.4% of the tourists travelled by air and 0.6% by land. About 61.3% of the Sri Lanka tourists were males. The dominant age group of tourists was 25 to 34 years, 26.6%, followed by the age group 35 to 44 years, 24.7%, and 45 to 54 years, 15.4%. Average duration of stay of Sri Lanka tourists in India during 1994 was 29.2 days. 4. Germany. Nationals of Germany contributed about 5.5% of the foreign tourist arrivals in India during 1994 and occupied the fourth position amongst the major tourist-generating markets to India. The tourists from this country have been increasing steadily over the years except during some of the years in 80s. The arrivals grew from 55,855 in 1980 to 85,352 in 1994. At a compound rate of growth of 3.1%. A substantial growth of about 37.0% was registered during 1986, followed by about 1.5%, 6.2% and 6.2% growth during 1987, 1958 and 1989 respectively. The traffic during 1989 to 1991 continued to increase, but the growth of increase was meager. The growth during 1992 was 17.2% over the year 1991. The traffic from this country declined by 1.3% during 1993. However, the traffic from this country increased by 5.9% during 1994 and 4.3% in 1995. About 61.3% of the German tourists were males. The age groups of 25.34 years and 35 to 44 years dominated the arrivals from this country with 26.5% and 25.8% respectively. The age group of 45 to 54 years came next with 20.7%. Almost 99.9% of German tourists had their usual place of residence in Germany. The number of German residents who visited India during 1994 was 85,226 as against the arrivals of 85,352 German nationals. German tourists stayed on an average about 28.2 days in India during 1994. The maximum German tourists accounting for 36.8% visited this country during January to March 1994. 5. France. The arrivals for French nationals also showed a steady increase from 1980 onwards with an annual compound rate of growth of 1.6% per annum till 1994. The arrivals grew from 58,682 in 1980 to 73,088 in 1994. During 70s the growth achieved was in the range of 4% to 56%, but during 80s, especially from 1983 onwards, there was a negative trend. The arrivals during 1986, however, registered an increase of about 49.6%. After having a negative growth of arrivals during 1987, arrivals from France showed a positive growth of 8.3%, 11.7% and 1.9% during 1988, 1989 and 1990 respectively. The arrivals from this country increased by 7.1% during 1992 with arrivals of 74,304 tourists. However, the traffic declined by 0.9% during 1993. The growth registered during 1994 was about 3.4% over 1993. The contribution of French nationals to the total tourist arrivals in India was about 4.7% during 1994. The growth during 1995 was 12.7% over 1994. About 57.6% of the French tourists were males. The age group 35 to 44 years accounted for 27.9%, followed by age group 25 to 34 with 59%. The January to March period was the most popular for visits by the French tourists, constituting 29.7%, followed by the months of July to September with a percentage of 29.6%. The average length of stay of French tourists was about 30.2 days during 1994. 6. Japan. Japan is the most important tourist-generating market of India in the East. Though the arrivals of Japan nationals were increasing steadily till 1980, it declined during 1981 and 1983. During 1985, 1986, 1987, 1988, 1989 and 1990, the arrivals from the country again went up by 3.4%, 19.4%, 27.0%, 6.5%, 19.2% and 0.7% respectively. However, it declined during 1991 with 22.1% over 1990. The arrivals from Japan during 1992 recorded a phenomenal growth of about 28.9% over 1991. However, the arrivals during 1993 declined by 17.5% over the year 1992. The arrivals during 1994 were 63,398, registering an increase of about 27.8% over 1993. The arrivals grew from 30,575 in 1980 to 63,398 in 1994. The compound growth rate during this period was 5.3%. The year 1995 witnessed a growth of 19.9% over 1994. The contribution of Japanese tourists to the total arrivals in India was 4.1% during 1994. In 1994, about 65.4% of the Japanese tourists were males. The dominant age group of these tourists was 25 to 34 years, 27.3%, followed by the age group of 35 to 44 years, 24.8%. On an average, a Japanese tourist spent about 23.1 days in India during 1994. The maximum number of Japanese tourists, 20,556, 32.4%, arrived during the months of January to March, followed by tourists 20,518, 32.8%, during the months of July to September. C-Sec. 3.37, Canada. The tourist traffic to India from Canada has grown since 1980 at a compound growth rate of 6.3% per annum. The arrivals from this country during 1994 were 56,441 as compared to 23,783 in 1980. The arrivals increased steadily from 1972 onwards except during 1984 when there was a decline of about 15.8%. It, however, registered an increase of 37.3% during 1986 and went down by 5.4% and 0.5% during 1987 and 1988 respectively. Traffic increased during 1989 and 1990 by 11.5% and 1.8% and decreased during 1991 by 11.9% over previous year. However, the traffic from Canada increased during 1992, 1993 and 1994 by 20%, 10.2% and 18%, respectively. The share of Canada in the total tourist traffic to India was about 3.6% during 1994. About 98.5% of the Canadians tourists visited India by air during 1994. About 58.2% of the Canadians were males and the age group which was predominant was 35 to 44 years, sharing 25.9% of the total, followed by the age group of 25 to 34 years, 21.2%. As per the estimates available, the average duration of stay of Canadian tourists was 28.5 days. During 1994, the October to December period accounted for 38.8% of the arrivals, followed by the period January to March with 28.3%. The province in Canada which generated maximum traffic to India was Newfoundland, 54.5%. The other important tourist-generating provinces were Ontario, 31.7%, British Columbia, 11.7%, Alberta, 0.9%, and Quebec, 0.6%. In 1995, the growth registered over 1994 was 18.1%. 8. CIS. During 1988, the erstwhile USSR emerged as one of the major tourist-generating markets for India, registering a growth of about 20.6% over the previous year. The growth registered during 1989 and 1990 was about 9.5% and 2.0% respectively over previous years. After showing the decline of 10.7% during 1991, the traffic momentum picked up and recorded a 21.5% increase during 1992. The growth registered in tourist arrivals from this country during 1993 and 1994 was 23.4% and 15.9% over 1992 and 1993 respectively. The tourist traffic from CIS during 1980 was merely 11,037, which increased to 56,387 in 1994 with a compound growth rate about 12.4% per annum. The contribution of CIS to the total traffic to India was about 3.6% in 1994. The air was the predominant mode of transport to the CIS tourist, constituting 99.3% of the total arrivals. Remaining tourists came through sea and land routes. The male tourists constituted about 66.3% in 1994. The dominated age group was 35 to 44 years, accounting for 33.8% of total arrivals, followed by the age group 25 to 34 years with 32.5%. About 99.7% of CIS tourists had their usual place of residence in CIS, and the number of such residents who visited India during 1994 was 56,244. The maximum number of tourists from CIS came to India during January to March and July to September, constituting about 29.6% and 27.5% respectively. The average length of stay of CIS tourists was about 23.3 days during 1994. The 1995 CIS ranking went down to 11th with a decline of -27.9%. 9. Singapore. During 1993, Singapore emerged as one of the top 10 tourist-generating markets by relegating Malaysia at LLTH position. During 1994, Singapore relegated Italy to 10th position and occupied the 9th position. The arrivals from this country during 1994 were 44,157 as compared to 40,223 in 1993, registering an increase of about 9.8%. The tourist traffic during 1980 was merely 16,637, which increased to 44,157 in 1994 with an annual compound growth rate of about 7.2%. The contribution of Singapore tourists to the total traffic to India was about 2.8% during 1994. The male tourists constituted about 59.9% in 1994. The dominant age group was 25 to 34 years, accounting for 28.6% of total traffic, followed by the age group 35 to 44 years with 26.4%. Maximum tourists from Singapore came to India during the fourth and second quarter of 1994, constituting about 26.4% and 26% respectively. The average length of stay of Singapore tourists was about 30.5 days during 1994. While 62.8% of Singapore tourists visited India for holiday and sightseeing, 25.6% of tourists came for business purposes. In 1995, Singapore went to the 10th position in spite of an 18.1% increase over 1994. 10. Italy. As has been the case with many of the important West European nationalities, the Italian tourist arrivals were also on the increase from 1972 to 1989. However, the arrivals during 1990 and 1991 showed a decline of about 3.1% and 16.4% respectively. The arrivals from Italy during 1992 registered an increase of about 24.3%, but the traffic declined during 1993 and it was about 21.3% over 1992. The traffic from this country increased by 7.9% during 1994 over 1993. While the arrivals from this country during 1980 were 29,002, it increased to 43,510 in 1994, registering a compound rate of growth of about 2.9%. The contribution of Italy to the total tourist arrivals in India was 2.8% in 1994. The predominant mode of transport was air, constituting about 98.7% of the arrivals. The percentage of male tourists was 5.8% in 1994. The age groups dominant in the arrivals were the age group of 35 to 44 years, accounting for 29.1% of the arrivals, followed by the age group of 25 to 34 years with 28.4%. The July to September quarter accounted for TNE maximum number of arrivals, constituting 37.6% followed by the quarter January to March with 28.7%. The average duration of stay of an Italian tourist was 26.2 days during 1994. In 1995, Italy moved up to 8th position from 10th with 21.8% increase over 1994. Malaysia moved to 10th position in 1995 with an increase of 22.8% over 1994. The 1995 figures show that many countries showed an increase over the previous year. Many tour operators are moving to these new markets. The countries which showed an increase of more than 15% in 1995 are mentioned in Table 5. Table 5. Tourist arrivals in India, increase in percentage 1995-1994. Look at the screen. Table 6 gives the percentage of foreign tourist arrivals according seasonal division. It indicates that the maximum arrivals are during January to March followed by October to December. Table 7 gives the lean and peak months. Table 6. Time of visit. Table 7. Peak and lean month of adults during 1994. Table 8 gives the percentage of age groups of foreign tourists. It shows that the maximum arrivals are in the age groups 25 to 34 and 35 to 44. Table 9 gives the proportion of tourists according to sex. It shows that the number of women foreign tourists is increasing every year. Table 8. Table 9. Proportion of tourists according to age groups. Proportion of tourists according to sex. Look at the screen. 33 case study. In the previous section we gave you an idea about the tourist generating markets for India. However, for marketing purposes this data only provides the basis as these markets have to be further segmented according to the variables mentioned in Unit 2. In this section we provide you certain characteristics of the Japanese market as a case study. Dr. P. Sastry, Regional Director, East Asian Region. May Day. Presentation at the India Marketing Meeting organized by in March 1996. The information provided here is based on her presentation. Table 10 gives the purpose of travel among men and women. Though 65.4% tourists are men, the figures indicate that the number of pleasure travelers is larger among women. The amount of free time is increasing among the Japanese and a strong currency brings in added advantages. The domestic travel costs are high in Japan and people frequently travel overseas. The destination brand is the most important factor in travel decision making, followed by the price tag. The image of the destination is governed by factors like accessibility, good hotels, agreeable climate, good sightseeing, shopping facilities, and suffrage. The Japanese are affluent tourists. They come under the category of high spenders, though they are cost conscious. On an average they spend 5 times more than UK tourists and 3 times more than the US and French tourists. They prefer personalized services and carefully choose the destinations out of the many available. They make use of every possible source of information in their decision making. Among them, family travel is on the increase, and children groups are also traveling. It is suggested that the travel and tourism industry in India should package special tours and services catering to their perceptions rather than selling general packages meant for all nationals. This means developing exclusive packages to suit their needs. Market not just pilgrimage tours of Buddhism only but combine culture, adventure, health, leisure and sightseeing in the packages. Target young people and women, and attempt to fill the information gap about India. It should be noted that as per the Japan Travel Survey by AB, Road Travel Magazine, India ranked as number 5 in the list of new areas for visits. Delhi figured in the top 50 places they want to visit. India was rated as giving a very high travel satisfaction by those who have visited. And about 80% of potential visitors to India are aware that India is a good destination for cultural tours. Similar exercises are carried out to understand various tourism markets the world over. See also Unit 26, TS2. 3.4 Intra-regional. We have seen earlier that intra-regional tourist flows are on the higher side in Europe, East Asia and America. See sub-sec. 3.2.1. In relation to India, Table 11 gives you the figures of arrivals from neighboring countries. Table 11. Tourism arrivals in India. When compared with the tourist flows in other parts of the world, the number of intra-regional tourists visiting India is not very encouraging. Political conditions and relations have been playing a major role in this regard. However, it is time that efforts should be made to increase the tourist flows. The SAARC nations have initiated measures in this regard, and the tour operators, travel agents, hoteliers and airlines from these countries are joining hands not only to encourage intra-regional tourism but also to jointly sell South Asia destinations in other markets. A South Africa Travel and Tourism Exchange, SOTHSM, Mart was held in New Delhi in April 1996 to showcase as sellers of the combined tourism products. The Indian tourism industry is also targeting the markets in neighboring countries to increase the market share. This exercise is to be based on the various approaches for market segmentation dealt with in Unit 2, 3.5 domestic markets. In TS2, UNIT 2, the sprawl and flows of domestic tourists were discussed at some length. In this section we provide certain other information in this regard. The Department of Tourism, Government of India had conducted a pilot survey of domestic tourists at 22 centers spread all over the country in 1981-82. Besides the findings of this survey, not much data is available, except for the statistics of arrivals collected by some state tourism departments. Based on this pilot survey, tables 12 to 21 provide you certain information about domestic tourists. Tabak 12, Slate-wise Oljan 01 domestic tourists, 1981-82. Table 13, travel habits. Table 14, average length of stay. Table 15, expenditure pattern. Table 16, accommodation used. Table 17, modes of transports used. Table 18, occupational station. Table 19, income station W, LN rupees. Table 20, purpose of travel. Table 21, age-wise breakup. Look at the screen. The data provided in tables 12 to 21 is slightly outdated as the year of survey is 1981-82. However, certain trends which emerge through this data are relevant. For example, age is an important factor, with 30 to 55 years being the largest group, followed by 13 to 29 years. Table 21. Table 13 indicates that majority of domestic tourists travel DTH family. Leisure, business and pilgrimage remain the dominant purpose of travel. Table 20. People from business, service and professionals form the bulk of the tourist market. Table L8. Majority of tourists come from middle class and upper middle class. Table 19. Domestic tourists don't go for long holidays, average 5.4 days, as compared to foreign tourists whose average length of stay in India is 28.4 days. Table 14. Rail travel remains the dominant mode of travel. Table 17. Most of these trends also get reflected from the data collected at destinations by the local authorities. For example, a survey conducted by the tourist office at Ranikhet Hill Station in Kumaon Hills of UP in 1987 gave following results. Occupation-wise, 35.5% tourists were from government service, 24.7% from private sector, 19.4% from business and 4.3% professionals, followed by 12.3% others. 90.3% tourists were from the age group 21 to 50 years. Region-wise, 41% tourists were from West Bengal, 29% from North and 19% from Maharashtra and Gujarat. Compare this trend with Table 12. The results of the survey conducted by the Himachal Pra, 5% followed by middle class, 58%, etc. The tastes and trends among the domestic sector are always changing fast. For example, adventure and ecotourism is picking up. Weekend travel to nearby destinations is increasing. I-group travel by school children and college students is on the increase. Tourists are demanding special packages and services, particularly among the higher income groups. Beside LTC travel by government employees, private sector employees are also getting travel incentives. The number of honeymooners is increasing. Expenditure on shopping is increasing with the demand for ethnic products and handicrafts. Pilgrimage is being mixed with leisure. Conventions tourism is picking up. Marriage groups have started using the services of domestic tour operators. The frequency travel for leisure is going up, with people taking more than one trip in a year, etc. The importance of domestic tourism has been acknowledged by the government, and efforts are being made to provide better facilities for domestic tourists. Destinations like Goa are targeting the domestic market during off-season. Recently, a domestic tour operators association has also been formed with the aim to highlight the problems in their area. Domestic tourism markets are mainly concentrated in big and medium towns and the country side market, which is yet to be explored. Table 22. Estimated domestic tourist arrivals. Look at the screen. 3.6 Summary. The top 15 tourist-generating markets of the world are the developed countries, and interestingly, most of them are among the list of top arrivals also. This unit familiarized you with India's share in the world tourism market, the performance of 10 top markets for India, and the characteristics of these markets. Similarly, the unit gave you an idea about intra-regional travel, which compared to America, Europe and Southeast Asia is much less. In the Indian subcontinent, The domestic travel is on the increase and more market research is required in this area. Thank you.